Hey y'all, and welcome back to my channel. In this tutorial, we are going to be reviewing a lot of questions that I have received in regards to my new Artistry epoxy that I have been using and all of the paints instead of spray paint. So to start, we are going to use a True 32 from the Steel Magnolia company. This is a beautiful cup, and I thought it would just really make this design stand out. And instead of my normal epoxy method, we're going to be using this new COLORFLEX glitter glue from Artistry. I know I have been using CRYSTALAC glitter glue in my prior tutorials, but as I've said before, I really love testing out new products, giving you my opinion, and I incorporate everything that I love into my tutorials so that you always have options and can find what works best for you. I really love this glue. It does go on much thicker, so it gives a lot more for your glitter to adhere to. It does stay wet for quite some time, so it doesn't dry really fast and gives you plenty of time to get a nice smooth coat and get your glitter on there before it dries up. Now, y'all, don't make fun of my brush because I'm trying to be responsible and wash these every time I use them for paints and glues, but we haven't quite got there yet. So I had to cut the top of my makeup brush off because some glue had dried on it. So, but the best brush to use is a all over or a blush makeup brush, and you can get cheap ones from the dollar store or Walmart. Now, the glitter that we used to cover this tumbler was Aphrodite from PDB Creative Studio. This is not what we ended up with in the end, but I just wanted to show you my application process using the new COLORFLEX glitter glue. Now, before we go into the process of our peekaboo, I have printed my floral designs. I got these from Creative Fabrica, and I will link that down below for y'all. If you want to see how to print these out using your print and cut feature, I do have another tutorial. It is the Halloween version of the Floral Peekaboo, and it goes into a lot of detail and shows you step by step how to print these designs out. And I also have a tutorial for calibration. So if you're having issues with your Cricut program, check that one out as well, and it will help you calibrate your Cricut so that it prints and cuts correctly. Again, I'm using my COLORFLEX glitter glue. I cannot say that any other glue would work as well as this did. It didn't smear any of my ink. It went on really smooth, and I allowed it to seep down into my floral designs and then go back over them once again just with my brush, not additional glue, and sort of brush it in just a little bit more so any glue that seeped down in it and caused any bubbles, I just smoothed those out. I know that I have used the CRYSTALAC glitter glue in a lot of my prior tutorials. I do not suggest using that in this one because CRYSTALAC glitter glue does dry tacky, so it's perfect to use for a lot of things, but you don't want your flowers to dry tacky because you are going to handle them and put them on your tumbler. And if they're tacky, they're going to grab everything that's on your hands and any dust or lint that may be floating around in the air. Now, while this was still wet, I removed the background and took my tweezers and removed any of the areas that I could see that needed to be lifted. The glitter that you see on this tumbler is Brilliant, also from PDB Creative Studio. And since we are going to hand paint this instead of spray paint, we want to give the paints something to adhere to. So I'm using Mattify from Artistry as well. And we're going to basically just give this a matte finish so that our paint really sticks to our tumbler, and when we remove our temporary decals, it is not going to peel up any of our paint. The Mattify is some really amazing stuff. You can use it for so many things. One, of course, you can prep your cups. If you're doing a peekaboo method, you can prep your stainless with it. And you can also mattify your tumblers if you're doing a matte design. And they also sell these really nice mattify and prep pads that you can get on their website. Now, once you have a matte finish, just wash it off and dry it completely so that there is no wet residue left on the tumbler for you to apply your decals. For our Peekaboo stencils, I'm using a temporary matte vinyl. I use temporary because it does not leave any residue behind whenever I pull them off, and it is much easier to remove. It also helps that the tumbler is matte, so it's going to be easier to remove these. You just want to make sure that they are really adhered to your tumbler. Now, as far as size goes, I'm not going to say what exact size I use for this specific tumbler. What I usually do is I measure my tumblers and then I go about 1.5 to 2 inches smaller of the total length of my cup. So as you can see, this decal or this stencil is about 1.5 to 2 inches smaller than the total length of the cup. And then the 2 decals that I use on the front side are typically about 1 inch to 1.5 inches smaller than the one on the back side. When applying any sort of decals or stencils to a curved tumbler like this one, I always put the portion down first that is on the flat surface, and then when I get to the curve, I trim around the decal and put it down piece by piece. It would have been really helpful if I had left some of the backing on there so it didn't like stick to my cup and I had to constantly babysit it. But, you know, I make things complicated, as I've said in many of my tutorials. But we got it done. As for placement of the decals on the front side, I stand my cup up and make sure that I am completely opposite of the decal, and then I place these two on the top and along the bottom rims of the cups. Like I said, there's no rhyme or reason to it. You can really just stick them anywhere. The purpose of these is just to give a shimmer in behind your main floral design. And I'm so sorry, y'all. I was recording and my phone has been acting up on me, and that is what I record with. I have no clue where the footage went for the first coat, but I am going to show you how I did my second coat of paints. So I'm using the FLIPN Awesome paints from the CRYSTALAC company. The blue is Midnight Blue. It is absolutely beautiful, and the gray that we are using is Slate Gray. Now, the reason that I'm using a piece of a sponge to dab this in is because you don't want to use a brush that when you go over your stencils, it's going to accumulate around the edges of your stencil. And then when you remove your stencil, it is more likely to lift up or have thicker areas that's not going to allow you to put your floral designs on flat. You can, however, use a brush to get your initial ombre and then go in with a sponge and just dab everywhere that your paint is to make sure that you do not have any gloops of paint anywhere, and you get a really nice, smooth, and even coverage without it accumulating around your decals. Artistry did just launch their own lines of paint, so you can use either the CRYSTALAC FLIPN Awesome paints or the Artistry COLORFLEX paints. Both of them are amazing, amazing paints. They're designed to go directly on the stainless of the tumbler. I have tried this with regular acrylic paints in the past, and it just completely turns out a hot mess. So this is a total game changer, being able to use these really high quality paints from the CRYSTALAC company and Artistry to get a really nice coverage of paint for our peekaboo designs. You don't have to go outside to spray paint or pop up your tent in your craft room area, and you don't have to deal with the terrible spray paint cans that we have all experienced. And I really feel like it is so much easier to get a beautiful ombre with hand painting, because you can constantly add a little bit more and dab those colors or blend those colors together than trying to spray paint an ombre with the wind blowing in your backyard. It's not ideal. So I'm really excited to be able to show this to y'all. Now, once you have blended your ombre or you have got your solid color complete and there are no gloops of paint anywhere, you're going to set this to the side and allow it to dry completely. Now, I do use a heat gun. I know a lot of people like to sit their tumblers in front of a small space heater or use a heat gun to dry. With these paints, you don't want to apply too much heat. So if you do use any sort of heat to dry your paints quickly, you want to hold that back away from your tumbler, so it's basically just getting the warm air and not the heat from your heat gun or whatever you're using. Once that dries completely, you're going to remove your stencils. And another good thing about using these paints instead of a spray paint is that if you slip anywhere while trying to pull your decal off or nick your cup, it is a lot easier to mix your paints to match the shade, or just if it's in a solid area, you can just dab your paint on, correct the mark or mistake, and then dry that, and you're never going to be able to tell that there was any marks on your tumbler. And as you can see, the paint is nice and thin aside the stencil whenever I remove it, and there's no chips or peeling happening, so that is really awesome. And we're just going to go ahead and skip to adding our floral design and our decal, because I'm sure you get the point on removing your stencil. This mama decal I made myself, and it is linked for free in the Dropbox that is pinned to the top of my Brittany Barnes Boutique group. So if you're not in there, go ahead and join if you want to snag this decal. Since this is a curved tumbler, I just put that on the top portion, and it is 3.5 inches wide. If I were to put this on a straight tumbler, I would have went center and then went just slightly up. So I would say on the top third portion of the tumbler is where my decal would have went. Make sure your florals are dry, and the first one we are going to put on is the largest on the back side so that we can work our other designs around that large one. So I flip it over and make sure that my mama decal is face down, and then center my florals on the back. Now, for going around a curve with a printable vinyl, you can add just a tiny bit of heat around the curve and allow your decal to sort of flex so you can apply it a little bit better without any creases in it. I was a little scared, not gonna lie, to add some heat to this since the paint turned out so well in the background. I didn't want to cause it to heat up and peel or chip. But now you know, if you were to put any sort of printable vinyl or regular vinyl wrap on a tumbler, you can add a little bit of heat and it makes it more flexible so that you can curve it around any sort of curve or taper that is on your tumbler. As for placement, I take 2 of the smaller clusters and put them on the opposite side of the little mama decal. And then I go up in each of the 4 corners in between the front and the back and just place the other clusters. It kind of helps pull the tumbler together. And since they're watercolor, it's really easy to trim off any pieces that may be too large for the area. And of course, there's always some elements left behind on the backing whenever I pull these off. Don't panic, it's just hard for it all to stick together when they're so thin. You can just peel them off and place them wherever you need them on your tumbler. And since we used our COLORFLEX glitter glue to seal these in, there's no sealing required. Just make sure that all of your designs are pushed down and they are not going to lift when you use epoxy on your tumbler. I'm using ARTISTRY Fast Set 1-to-1 ratio. This is a new product that just launched on their website, and y'all, I cannot tell you how much I love this stuff. I'm mixing Diamond Dust from PDB Creative Studio a teeny tiny bit. It does not take much to give a beautiful shimmer into my ARTISTRY epoxy, And look at how smooth this stuff is going on, y'all. Again, this is the 1-to-1 ratio fast set. They do have another one that's 2-to-1, and they had that available in samples, or still do, on their website for free. So if you have tried the 2-to-1 before and it wasn't for you, run and go get this 1-to-1 ratio fast set. The 2-to-1 is perfect as well. It has a longer dry time and it's a little bit thinner, so I think it's perfect for coating tumblers that you don't want a lot of layers. So for instance, if you were doing some sort of peekaboo that required multiple layers, you're going to want to grab that 2-to-1 ratio. That's a thinner viscosity, and that will give you a thinner coverage. This is a thick viscosity, and it dries to the touch. And you ready for it? 1 hour. 1 hour. I started this cup at 7 o'clock in the morning. By 8 o'clock, I was putting my first coat of epoxy on it. And by 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I had already did my second coat, because you can do that after 45 minutes. And it was dry to the touch. I could handle it and take my pictures and my videos for this tutorial at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Mind you, this can be different for everyone in your own environments, but it was 68 degrees in my room, and our humidity here in North Carolina was 100% yesterday when I was doing this cup. So that is pretty amazing results. Now, since this is a darker tumbler, any kind of lint or specks, of course bugs, we don't want bugs on it, can find their way to this tumbler, and it's really going to stand out. So I'm going to take my critter cover from Imagination 3D and just pop that on really quick to prevent anything from making its way to my beautiful tumbler surface. And now for the big secret, or at least part of it. I have been working with an amazing company to develop some of these floral designs that are tumbler ready. They are proportionately sized by me and sent over so that they are universal for most size tumblers and ready to just pop on there and avoid all of the print and cut issues. I am literally so excited for this to launch. When it does launch, I will have a tutorial, so make sure that you are subscribed and hit the little bell to be notified anytime a new tutorial drops, and be one of the first to snag all of the details and how to get them on pre-order. Don't forget, we do have an Instagram page. We just hit 5,000 followers, so we're about to have an awesome giveaway on there, and our Brittany Barnes Boutique Facebook group. Thank you all so much. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and I will see you next time.